I'm here with Mr. Lamin Jabbi.
And I'm a professor here at Seneca College, and I'm also a program coordinator for College Opportunity Program, General Arts and Science Program.
I have a few questions I want to ask you today. The first question is, how do you explain the mismatch between post-secondary education and employment opportunities?
I think the mismatch has to do with all the major players are not really connected in terms of what the realities of the job market today. What is happening is that a lot of the jobs are disappearing because of technology, because of the globalization, because of changes in the economy. I think the mismatch has to do with the fact that these three stakeholders are not communicating to see what is the challenges that the young people are facing. Why is there so many unemployed young people in Canada, not only in Canada, but globally? And I think, in my opinion, what is happening is basically because the industries they're changing. The nature of the jobs that existed 10 years ago doesn't exist today. Technology is replacing a lot of jobs that people who graduate from universities and colleges were doing. Basically, what I would say the mismatch has been, the education system is not training students for what is in the job market or what is out there in the job market. And the job markets are not also getting the right students coming from universities and colleges because the curriculum is not reflective of what is happening in the job market. The government, which should be the one that is coordinating between employers and schools, haven't been involved in changing a lot of the curriculum requirements. So what I think needs to be done is all these three major players sitting down, talking about what is happening, looking at the youth unemployment and see what are the barriers, what are the challenges, what are the problems that are happening, why the young people are not getting jobs. So the education system need to look at their curriculum and say our curriculum is reflective, as I said, of what is happening in the job market. The government should be obviously encouraging a lot of industries to recruit students. And I think that recruitment process should involve the government allowing students who are doing co-op to be paid. So eventually, I think that will help some of these young people really finding the right employment and employers finding the right candidates for the positions they create. My opinion is there should be concerted effort on the side of the government, the industries, and the education system to change the whole education system and to be geared towards, I would say, part of the education system should be the industries in the education system, schools involved in the industry, all of them working together, looking at the needs of the employers, people who are looking for students, and the education system also bringing in those industries into the classrooms to teach them, give these students skills that once they finish universities and schools, there'll be those jobs waiting for them because they've already been trained way before. Traditionally, students just graduate from school without even having any job experience, some of them, especially in the liberal arts, where there's no kind of, I would say, job training. So that has to change because a lot of the unemployment has to do with this mismatch between what is taught in schools and what the industries need, and the role the government should play to sort of see that those things are collaborated together or working together to create opportunities for young people. When they graduate, they have jobs out there.
Just to touch on in terms of how the educational institution, some programs actually have the co-op. And I also took part in co-op, but not all the programs have co-op.
That's correct.
So do you see improvements in how co-op is done? Because some students, even though they end up taking a co-op, which is part of their program, some of them end up not getting a job when they call back the previous person that hired them to do their co-op, they end up not getting that job. So, and then they end up pretty much starting all over again. So do you think that that we should continue the path of co-op, or we should also extend co-op not just to certain programs but to all programs?
I think all programs in universities and colleges should have a co-op now. To me, it should be experiential learning that while you're learning, you also doing the job training in school. So when you get out of school, you already have a job lining for you. And the co-op, the reason why the co-ops are not working, because I said this, like I said before, it is this mismatch. The co-op is like, okay, we'll send students to this place, but the reality is that the corporations are not really involved in the training of those students before the co-op starts. So the co-op should be part of the student. Actually, the education system should be, the students should spend some time in the classroom, sometimes in the industry, sometime in the classroom, should be back and forth between the classroom and the workplace. As soon as you finish school, your job is there. You have the skills to be able to work in these fields. You have the skills where these employers need. So I think the best thing for students, for education system, is to work again with the industries to create a curriculum that will allow students to have the education, but as well as the job skills, which will be part of the co-op arrangement. So to me, the education system has to be overhauled. And by overhauling it is to change the nature of how these co-op programs are even run. The co-op programs should be, to me, in my opinion, like an apprenticeship, whereby you spend some time in the classroom, you also spend some time in in whatever industry it is. Okay. That way you have the knowledge of the industry, you also have the education background.
Okay. So you already touched on how governments, industries, and education institutions can play a role to resolve this. Do you have, because I know you already talked about it, is there anything that you want to add in terms of how these three stakeholders can improve or can make amendments to this?
Yeah, I think the best thing is the government should be the coordinator in this, because the government should bring these two sides together and say, look, this is the nature, let's be talking to each other. What are the employers? What do you need? What are the kind of skills you need the students who are graduating from colleges and universities should have for your industry? The industries are saying they don't have qualified students. They don't have enough students for skills, for jobs they have. Yet still the schools are saying the students are graduating, but they're not getting jobs. So there's a problem here. I think my view is that there's lack of communication between these two stakeholders, and the government's role should be to bring them together, to work together, so the employers can educate the education system. What are the skills they need in this current economic situation, in these global economic conditions, for students to get, so that they can have jobs, because the jobs are there. Well, what kind of jobs that are available? The schools are also not doing this. The schools are just doing the same old traditional teaching, the same traditional way. They haven't changed to meet the needs of the industries. And I think the biggest challenge is because the two parts are not communicating to understand each other's needs very well.
So just to add on to what you're saying is that the government should be the one to coordinate. Absolutely. And then there should be a communication between the industries and the education institutions.
Absolutely.
And I also like the idea of how you mentioned that the industries should come and actually educate the post-secondary institutions. Tell them, hey guys, this is the workplace, this is how things are going right now, and this is what we think you should teach potential candidates for employment when they finish, right? I like that, because most times is the school prepares this potential candidate for employment, and they end up finishing the education, and then pretty much what you were taught and what you're doing is completely different.
Absolutely. And I like I said, the best thing for the future of the education system is to allow these industries to be part of the classroom. They have to be part of the classroom. You cannot work in isolation with each other. The industries have to be present in the classroom. And I think what I can say, the specialists or the experts in the industry should be teaching, co-teaching some of these courses in the school system, because they have the knowledge, they have the skills, they can bring that into the classroom. And the school system should also allow the students to go and see what is happening in the industries. So the students should, before you graduate from school, should spend certain number of hours in the industry and certain number of hours in the classroom. Not all classroom and you go for a month or two co-op and you think you know what is happening there. That is not really enough for them to be able to get the skills and the like. So my wish is, as an educator, and I know this is probably going to create problem for myself, because what I'm saying here may take a job from some of the educators. But I think for the best, to solve the unemployment challenges for young people, I think there should be co-teaching between industries and the education system. Like I said, it is important for the industries to have the presence in the classroom, because they know the kind of skills they need. They know what they want the students to learn. And that communication should be coordinated by the government, because the governments are the ones who are also paying for this education system. They are the ones who are overseeing this education system. So I think it should be a concerted effort on their side to bring the two together, like I said, to make sure the education the students are having fits the needs of the industries that are out there, so that they can do the job.
Okay, so the next question is, how can education complement employment?
Education can complement employment by obviously training, giving the students the right skills. Because when the students have the right skills, the right experience, that is what the industry's employment needs. So to complement that is basically teaching the right skills to the to the students and the youth, so that those skills, the students are ready with those skills to transfer into the workplace. So that's how they can complement.
So another question is, do you think that, especially for university, because I know college, well, they tend to focus more on practical learning, but universities are more like theories, right? Do you think that universities should get rid of programs that have no relevance at all in the workplace, instead of having these programs and students, because of the name, students will just decide, oh, I want to become a zoologist, or I want to do a program that pretty much as soon as you're done, it's either you're going to become a professor teaching that program, but there's no work for you at all, and start focusing on work-based programs. If it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you're right. Most university programs are outdated. They're outdated in the sense that they are still caught up in 50, 60 years of the curriculum. They haven't changed with times. What I've seen is that there's so much technology involved. Technology is replacing a lot of jobs that are used to be done by people, because again, there was a need for that at that time. However, right now what is happening is that the education system, especially in the universities, are not really, I would say, creating the kind of education that the students can use to, when they go out there, to apply into the field. So what I'm maybe suggesting is that universities, the education system, especially the liberal education system, the liberal arts programs, should be changed, they're outdated. They should be more experiential. They should be more practical, more applicable. They should be applied degrees. And these applied degrees, I'm not saying that, you cannot be trained to be a professor, but a lot of PhD students who graduate with PhDs some of them never taught in a classroom. So when they get out of university with PhDs, they expect to go into the classroom to teach. They have no teaching experience. So it's not just getting a PhD and finding yourself in the classroom. It is not, there's no practicality in that thing. It's more theory-based. You haven't had much practical experience in terms of that. So for colleges, you're right. Most of the college programs not all, but most of them are applied. But even that applied programs, I would say some of them or most of them are outdated. They're not working very much with the industries because the industries are advancing so far ahead because of the technology. So the colleges and the universities have to reflect on what are the needs of these industries. What are we giving these students? Are our students really graduating with tangible degrees or diplomas so that they can go out there, use these diplomas either by being employed or on their own so they can create those opportunities for themselves? And I think this is the problem because, again, that's that miscommunication or lack of communication. As you said, mismatch. This mismatch is a big problem. And to solve the issue of unemployment, which is very high among young people, especially nowadays, is because, again, these two entities are not talking to each other the way they should be. The reality is different from the way it used to be 20, 30, 50 years ago. And the education system, in my opinion, is still stuck in that period, whereas the industries are forced to advance because technology, because of globalization, all of these things are forcing them. But what I've seen in Canada, especially, in some countries, maybe it's not the same. Countries like Germany, from what I understand, the education system is geared towards helping these kids build skills. When they get out of schools and colleges, they already have jobs lining up for them. I think in Canada, the government should be looking at what is it that the industries need for schools to teach so that when these kids are out, they can find jobs. Would that require them to cut out some, to sort of eliminate some programs in colleges and universities? Maybe that's the way, because times have changed. The education system must change with times. So definitely, I think they need to look at more practical, more applied programs so that the students can have the education that is tangible. When they get out, like I said, they will find jobs out there, or they can be self-employed because they can use those skills they've learned to build careers or to do their own thing without relying on employment all the time.
So the last question is, what's your advice to African Caribbean youths and potential students going back to school or who are in school in terms of choosing the right education for the right employment?
So my advice is, before going to universities and colleges, do a career cruising. Find out what are the industries, jobs out there. What are the skill sets you have, your own passion and skill set? Look at that. Match that with a program in university and colleges. And that, I think, will be the best way out for you to prepare yourself for tomorrow's job market. Even when you cannot find a job with anybody, you can be self-employed and take. So my advice to, number one, get a good career counseling. Find out on your own with your parents or with somebody that you trust, with a guardian, to do a lot of survey to look at 10 years from now, what are the jobs that are going to be out there. See what passion do you have, what one of these things you're more passionate about. Focus on that and build skills in that and go to school and do that. When you finish that, then there's a chance for you to be employed, either by industries or self-employed. But I also want to tell you a little bit about my program, because it's important for those youth who may look at an option for any post-secondary program. Our program is a one-year certificate program, which help a lot of young people who today are kind of confused with what career they want to go in. They can use our program as a step to survey, to look at what programs might fit their interest and their passion. So, and this one-year certificate can, once they complete a certificate with us, they can move into any diploma program or eventually even to university. That is the program I run here. But it's for young people who are marginalized, young people who trying to figure out what they want to do. People who are new immigrants and have barriers to education, all of those things are very important. That's what we do in our program.
Guys, we're going to conclude Meet the Prof, and you have heard from Mr. Professor Lamin, and today we discussed about the mismatch between education and employment, and we received a lot of insight into what the problem is and how it can be resolved, both from the stakeholders, and as you can also hear at the end is that he gave an advice especially to us African Caribbean students, that we need to discover ourselves and also do our research in terms of which programs are going to reflect the future employment. Thank you, sir.